Welcome to Ripped, Rattled, and Rose podcast, a safe place to have authentic conversations on mental health, womanhood, sisterhood, and purpose. I'm your host, Rose, and I personally understand the difficulties in admitting that you're struggling mentally. I've also felt victim of believing that the quality of my womanhood was rooted in how much pain I could endure without complaining or asking for help. So join me on my quest to not just discuss, but normalize the importance of tending to our own mental health while liberating one another to be bold enough to not just narrate, but decide our own version of womanhood while acknowledging the need for sisterhood. My ultimate goal is to create an environment that promotes honesty, transparency, and a place to be real. So kick up your feet, join me weekly as I intimately disclose how, although ripped and rattled, I still chose to roast. Don't go anywhere. This starts now. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Ripped, Rattled, and Rose podcast. It is your host, the one and only, your girl, Rose. And I can't even begin to tell you how excited I am. I am so grateful for everyone who stopped to listen, everyone who will listen in the future. I just want to say thank you in advance. I also want to give a huge thank you for every single person in my life that has added value to me and that has journeyed with me on my path to where I am thus far. And I don't care if you were up close or far away, if you were encouraging, if you ever prayed with me, if you ever said, yeah, I think you would be good at that. If you listened to my intro and outro, if you gave me topics to discuss, if you helped me come up with a name, thank you. It was all important. It was all necessary. It was all needed. I also want to give a special thanks to my podcast coach, Lauren, who is God sent. You know how you meet people and you know, like right from the beginning that this person was sent to your life to help you journey and do something amazing. And that was her. She has selflessly shared information that she has learned along the way of her journey. And she made me feel normal when I felt like I was being irrational. She has talked me off of the ledge. She has simplified things that I made a huge thing in my head, and I'm forever grateful for you. And I pray that God blesses everything that your hand touches times 10 exceedingly and abundantly, because you are a good person to know, because you're a good person. So thank you. I appreciate you, and I could not have picked a better coach. And I also want to give a huge thank you to my husband, right? He had to live with me and the process of all of this. And I was not always pleasant to be around. And, you know, when I'm anxious and frazzled, he would find a way to maneuver so that I can do the things that I needed to do. Thank you for sacrificing time that you would have much rather spent with me and allowing me to focus, because I needed to. I'm so grateful for that. And thank you for sewing too. Something that just was a thought, for, you know, giving me your resources, for looking up things to just lighten the load and try to make doing this and to be efficient and effective easier. I really appreciate you. I love you. And I notice every single kind gesture that you make so that I can do and be all the things that I'm called to. So I love you. Thank you. I appreciate you. I do want to give the listeners an opportunity to know me better as a person. I believe that the world is a better place when we're not pretending. And I know that that's a difficult thing to not do, because, right, this is the world of social media where you pick the right filter and you have the right angle and you have the right smile, and, you know, you can shop for the best body. But I think that the danger in that is it's like this false sense of one day being perfect. And it's a dangerous thing to try to attain, because it will never happen. So I think that we should all just look at ourselves and understand that all of your imperfections is perfect. Okay? And that's because your creator said so. So, in short, I was the third of my parents' children. I grew up in a home with my siblings and my mom and dad. I am 100% sure that each and every last one of me and my siblings, we all have different perspectives on what happened in our home because we all had different relationships, different roles, different ages. So naturally, it's not one and the same, which is good. I had a lot of fun growing up in the house with my siblings. They are my first friends. They are the people that taught me what loyalty looks like. They taught me what forgiveness looked like. They taught me what protectiveness looked like. They taught me what friendship is, unconditional love. So that was a wonderful blessing growing up, and I still love all of them immensely. They're all still amazing people. My mom, growing up, she was like she wrote to me pretty much. She was, if there was a human form of Jesus, to me, that was who she was. And still to this day, she is nurturing and selfless and caring. But she also has really high expectations, and she is a perfectionist. So, when you're growing up, that can be tricky. And then my dad, who I love, and him and I have, in my adulthood, been able to iron out some of our differences. But growing up, that was a very challenging relationship for me. And it affected all my relationships, from childhood up into. So, when you're young, you can't really perceive that your parents are young too. You just know that these are your parents and you want them to be the thing that you desire and display it in the way that you really, really like it. And that wasn't the case, the way my relationship was with my dad, the way he responded to me did not make me feel as if, he liked me very much, loved me at all. And I don't know, I felt scared all the time. At that point, he still was drinking. He is not drinking sometime, which is wonderful and has allowed me to meet a different version of him. But in my younger days, he did drink often and a lot, and he was not a pleasant drunk. So he was mean. His eyes was red. His behavior was explosive at times. And, it makes you nervous all the time. And I think that I learned relatively early that if I detach from the emotion, then it lessens the pain of it. And that was something that was probably, at least I thought it was good for that moment. But when you take those things and you try to apply them to all relationships, you end up with a host of broken and fractured relationships and a lot of hurt people. Growing up, you don't think that those things affect you. In my heart to heart, I felt like I didn't care. He don't care about me. I don't care about him. But it has proven to be the furthest thing from the truth. And then when he would be aggressive and sort of like a bully to myself, my siblings, or my mom, that really, really infuriated me because I felt like there may have been a little bit of, jealousy maybe, because we all had high esteem for my mom. And I think that the bullying tactics were a attempt to make us see her in a different light, maybe a weaker light. And that really upset me. I was mad at him for doing it. And then I would be mad at my mom because I felt like she should fight back more. So very young, a mental note of mine was that men are mean, explosive, and unpredictable, and that I was never going to allow a man to back me in the corner. And I just cowered down, that I would do everything and anything to never have to feel that kind of fear and uncomfortableness ever again in my life. I've always had good friends. I've always been, accepted by my peers. That was never an issue for me. But I don't think that I ever truly liked myself in my early years. I was very sensitive and I took things to heart. So if you say something mean to me, I would replay it in my head over and over again. Really, really young. And I was always anxious. I was always thinking about what if this happens or what if that happens? And I don't even know why that would be normal for a child, because I can remember having those emotions as early as 5 and 6. So you take the relationship or lack thereof that I have with my dad, and then you throw me out in the world. And that did affect my choosing in terms of the opposite sex, right? So undoubtedly, my selection would probably not be grade A choosing. It is amazing how we can be in environments that we completely hate, and then we go out in the world and we recreate those cycles over and over. And I did that for a large portion of my life. Once I was like old enough, I guess, to have like a boyfriend. It wasn't necessarily the best choice. You know, we both had our own issues. And I think that a lot of times, like when you don't heal, you gravitate towards people because you have familiar wounds, right? Our trauma is kind of the same. It doesn't have to mirror one another, but if it's abandonment and it's projection and all the rest of that good stuff, then a lot of times that is what we gravitate towards. So we did that. I did that. And my mother was not happy with, my choices, of course. And, my self-esteem was not even like where it should have been. Like, and that's what, it's like self-esteem. Mind you, I've always liked how I look. Like, I've never had an issue with my aesthetics, but it was this inside love that I was so far from. I could not connect to that. I don't even know if I truly knew how to identify that. So when I had this boyfriend and we're dating for about a year, and then there's this pressure to have sex, and I don't really want to have sex, and I'm not even really thinking about it, but at the same time, what else do you do, So I did it, and then ended up getting pregnant the first time that happened, and it changed the trajectory of my life, and it also added like a lot of abandonment and rejection in that respect as well, because neither one of us was emotionally mature enough to handle all that entailed. And it's crazy that you can't see yourself when you're marching in the parade, right? Sometimes I see 15-year-olds now, and I look at how innocent they look and the baby-fied face, and I say to myself, like, I cannot believe that, like, this was my intro to womanhood. When you coming from being a child to a preteen, and then you're like, boom, you're a mother now. And there's all of these roles that you're now mandated to have, and everybody have a specific way how these things should be done. And when you're not hitting the mark, it just makes you feel inadequate, overwhelmed, and unprepared. I was always good with babies until I had to bring my son home. He was a colic baby. He was hard to make happy. And, like sometimes he would cry and then I would cry, and it was just really, it was a lot. So now I'm expected to be a mother to a child, and I have absolutely no idea who I am. I think most 14, 15-year-olds are not, they probably have an identity crisis, but you throw being someone's parent on top of that, and it's just like, oh, a recipe for disaster. I think that my attempt to not feel was to like remove myself from the situation. So still to this day, if you ask me how I felt from conception up until delivery, I can tell you some things that made me angry, but I cannot communicate any true feelings at the time because I didn't feel anything, or at least I don't remember it. There are times where I could be driving and I will have a thought that came from 23 years ago, because that's how old my son is. And I was like, ooh, I didn't like that. But the idea that my brain had to suppress it, I had to forget it, I had to do whatever was necessary in order for me to stay sane without feeling a great deal of pain. And, so you think that, okay, this is pretty traumatic. You have sex, you get pregnant, you have this baby, you didn't have it didn't go how you would have wanted it to go as far as myself and my son's father. I can say that my family were extremely helpful and supportive. I don't have that story where I was made to drop out of school or put out the house or forced to live with a man and their mother. Like, that wasn't necessarily my story. But I do think that it intensified the identity crisis. It intensified the parts of me that felt inadequate and not good enough. Like, it just magnified, in my mind, all of my deficiency. So you would think that that would be enough, right? Because now I'm a mother, I'm a student, I'm a daughter, I'm a sister, I'm a friend, and I have a job. And I was having the hardest time trying to figure out how to balance all of these things because they're all important. And it just feels like I'm doing them all wrong. So like, why don't I just quit? quit? Like, why don't I just don't even attempt to do it right? And then it's not like I'm failing. This is what my brain tells me. Your choice is that you didn't even try. So the mind play that you have with yourself is crazy. So you would think that that would be enough for me to just find myself several seats and sit in it. Nope. Eventually, my son, father, and I reconnected. And, let's say that. My mother, when we left the hospital, she did not say, do you want to be on birth control? She said, you're going to be on birth control. I personally didn't want to because I was not having sex while I was pregnant. I was not having sex at the time of discharge from the hospital, but my mother said she's not playing games with me. Whenever, I'll be prepared. So I took them for a short while, but they made me feel sick and they made me thinner than I wanted to be, like completely ignorant. So instead of saying, can we try a different kind of birth control? Because I don't even think that I was aware that there was more than a pill. Threw them out. I threw them over the fence in the backyard because I just hated feeling like I was seasick all day. And I knew that there would not be a conversation about, yeah, go ahead, stop taking them. So eventually my son's father and I, we reconnected, and guess who started having sex again with no protection? Yep, you guessed it. That was me. So now I'm 17, pregnant for the second time, and I am thinking to myself, I can't have another baby. Like, there's absolutely no way. There's no way to even explain this to anyone. But I have absolutely no idea how to terminate a pregnancy by myself. I'd never scheduled my own doctor's appointment or anything in that nature. And time went past. I mean, days, weeks, months. And before I knew it, I was 6 months, and I'm like, okay, I have to say something to someone. And, my mother was not pleased, to say the least. I can imagine that that was probably embarrassing too for her. A lot of her friends and some of my family members, they had their minds made on how she should handle me when I was pregnant with my first son. And all of these were like harsh. Make her drop out of school. Don't let her go outside with her friends. Like, all of these things to make me never want to become impregnated again, when I don't think that those things work. I think therapy may have been beneficial or something in that nature, but I don't know if those things would have been beneficial to myself or my children. And honestly, my mother would ask me when I was pregnant with my first son, she would ask me like, well, how do you feel? Or, it's okay to cry. This is not what you expected. And I would say, I'm okay. And it was not that I was being dishonest, or if I knew that I was feeling bad, I would not have known how to put words to those emotions, because I did grow up in an era where it was because I said so. Or, you might get slapped and then told to fix your face. Like, well, excuse me, ma'am, my face is stinging over here. I'll get it together in a second. Or you get a whooping and then you tell, you want me to give you something to cry about? And it's like, yeah, you covered that. You absolutely did that. So you're told what to do, how to be, and how to feel. So unlearning those behaviors and learning how to admit that you're struggling, because I was okay being angry and outraged with something. I was completely fine with that. But to say that hurts my feelings, that's uncomfortable, sign of weakness, all of that good stuff. Just no, thank you. So I end up having my son. And at this point, my mother is not letting up. She has her foot on my neck. She is watching me like a hawk. She is. And then there was this tug of war thing that I felt with my children and my mom. I felt like we were always playing who is the mother, and I felt like she would always win those things. Like, what my heart wanted was for my children to admire me in the way that I admired my mother, but I felt like she was out mothering me. In my head, I'm comparing myself to the type of mother that she is, because that is the type of mother that I want to be. But I'm also feeling like I'm not giving the opportunity to do it, because I'm still being parented while I'm trying to parent. And the times that I would try to say, like, I don't like it when you reprimand me in front of my children, I would always be met with all of the sacrifices that were made on me and my children's behalf. And I understood it and I was appreciative of it, but I didn't realize that it would come at the cost of not having a say or a voice. So now my belief system is that men are unreliable, They will leave you with babies and pregnant and all the rest of that stuff. They're mean, they're violent, and you can't trust them. And now you put in my pocket too that you don't ask for help or you don't accept help, because when you accept it, then you become somebody's puppet. And it was like the furthest thing from what I wanted to do. I think that, and it was really, really bad for my already poor self-image that I had of myself. And I spent a lot of time depressed and nobody knew. And I spent a lot of time thinking about taking my life and nobody knew. And the only reason why I didn't follow through on that is because there was this thought of taking your own life. You're miserable in life and then you're miserable in death. And like, that's pretty pathetic. Like, who really wants to do that? So I used my other coping mechanism, which was avoidance and running. So I was uncomfortable at home because I felt like I no longer had a place there. So I avoided home as much as I possibly could. And in doing so, my children felt as if they were not a priority to me when I just was in a great deal of pain and I did not know or understand how to maneuver that. And I did that for a while, myself and my kid's father. Like, we would be on again, off again, on again, off again. And that was just, it got old. By the time I was 21, I was like, okay, I'm out. Got into another relationship that was worse than the first one because that was habitual cheating and domestic violence. So when I say that I made a mental note to never be put in a situation where you back me in a corner and make me cower down, that was an extreme thing for me. My rage and my anger was explosive and I was easily triggered, and I did not care what happened. If we fight to the death of us and one of us end up dead, then so be it. But you're going to know that not to handle me like that ever again. And that went on for about 5 years. And, you know, that was horrible as well because now I'm being cheated on all the time, which is embarrassing. I think that I'm crazy about this person and I don't really have refuge at home because nobody likes him or the relationship. So I can't really talk to them about what's happening with me. I hate it home. I hate it in the world. I hate everything. And I'm just feeling like I'm being swallowed up whole by grief and life and circumstances and everything that everybody wants me to do and how they want me to be. And I'm trying to do it. I'm trying to be it. And then when I realized that I'm never going to hit the target, I'm not going to be able to reach it, then I went on this pendulum where I'm swinging back and forth, where I'm trying to do perfectionism and then I'm in full-fledged rebellion. I had absolutely no balance whatsoever. And I think the part of me that realized that I was really, really in an unhealthy state was I would go and get annual PAPs and blood work because, you know, my mother was clear that you don't lay down with people without making sure that you have a gynecologist and so on and so forth. And every single time I would go for my PAP and they would do the blood work. And back then it took like 2 weeks to get the results back. For 2 weeks, I am staring at my phone and any number that calls me that I don't know. I am without words. I am frightened to death that they're going to tell me that I have something that I can't get rid of. And why? Not because I was cheating, not because I was with more than one person at a time, but because he was. And I knew it. And I was frightened to death to have those issues, but I kept doing it. I did it for 5 years. And I was like, once I ended up, and it seemed like a light switch with that relationship, like I woke up one day after 5 years and said, I quit. I'm just not going to do this anymore. And I was 25. I had finished LPN school when I was 23. Then when I was 24, I did a bridge program, which calls for me to move out of state. The agreement was that I would go out of state. I came home twice, 2 weekends a month, and my kids would come and see me sometimes so that I can be more financially stable. And I did it. And I did well. In school, you know, school was never an issue for me. In all honesty, most things that I actually attempted was not difficult for me. It was how I saw myself. I don't care how many good things I did. I don't care how I was affirmed. The thing that I heard the most was my negative perception of myself. It echoed in my head at all times. And I could not be alone. I could not be alone. Anytime that I would have any peace or any moment of just time to reflect and be with myself, I would fill those moments with people or things, because those were the times where the negative things that I felt about myself was the loudest. It's almost like somebody plugged it up to this huge speaker and on surround sound, and they turned the volume all the way up to the max, and I could hear it, and it was unbearable for me. And if I was going to stay alive, then I had to stay busy. And, regardless of if I was in places that were dangerous for me, or people that didn't necessarily like me, and people that I probably didn't even like. And I think that is the danger in not knowing who you are. When you don't know who you are, you accept things that you would never accept if you did. And you go places that you would never go if you did. And these spaces, they can't appreciate you. And they actually dim your light and don't add anything to you. But you want to be accepted so bad, and you're so afraid of being with self that you would subject yourself to just about anything, because anything is better than being alone. Or at least that was my experience. So when I get back from nursing school, and I decide that I'm ready to leave. I want to live on my own. And I had attempted to move out like a couple years before that, and I kind of felt guilted into staying. So this particular time, I move out in secret. I'm house hunting, and I haven't told a soul, because I don't want anybody to talk me out of it. I don't want anybody to make me feel like I can't do it. I just have this plan in my head, and that is what I want to do, and this is happening. That did a disservice to both me and my children. We only moved about 20 minutes away from my mother's house, and it was a neighboring suburb. You would have thought that we moved to Egypt. My kids were miserable. They were not happy. And this just confirmed everything that I thought about myself, that I'm an awful mother, that I don't have the ability to parent them apart from my mother, and that they don't like me very much and they don't love me. I was too emotionally immature to understand that they didn't like the abrupt change, that they had lived in the home with my mother for their entire life, and they were with her primarily while I was away at school. So maybe having a conversation and allow them time to adjust and telling them, what's going to happen would have served us better. But this was literally the straw that broke the camel's back for me, because all I ever wanted to do was be a good mother. I don't care what else I did wonderful in the world. That was the thing. That motherhood is the thing that changed the trajectory of my life. And it's also the thing that it was like, that's it. Like, they don't even like me. They don't want to be here. They don't want to be with me. And I had started drinking socially. Like, we would, I think that me and my friends, we were kind of late to the party scene, but we would drink socially. So what I learned in those social settings is that alcohol helps you sleep. And I've always had trouble sleeping as early as ages 5 and 6. But at this time, my insomnia was at an all-time high. So I would get like a half a pint to help me go to sleep. And it did. It helped me fall asleep. I would fall asleep fast. I would stay asleep the entire evening. However, my tolerance was increasing rather quickly. So I went from, okay, a half a pint is 2 double shots. That puts me right to sleep. Now I need a pint. Now I'm telling myself, okay, don't drink till the weekend. And then I say, okay, I can't do that. Just don't start until Wednesday. Okay, I can't do that. Well, just wait until after work. Can't do that either. So my family is like, yeah, sis, you need to go to rehab. And I was outraged. I mean, the audacity of them. How dare they think that, yes, I'm drinking every day, but how dare they think I have a drinking problem? The nerve. They're so rude. And I went to rehab to appease them, but I refused to take directive suggestions or admit that the alcohol was a problem. In my mind, everybody else was the problem. I was this wonderful person that everybody was just out here treating poorly. And never mind the role that I played in the dismantling of very pertinent relationships. I am completely committed to the fact that these people are unreasonable and they just don't get me and they never will. So I wasted 28 days going to the treatment because I came out with the exact same mindset that I went in. And, I probably should have just stayed at home. So then at this time, I went when I was 28, shortly after I turned 29. I'm like, you know what? me and my kid's father were separated for about 7 years. And I don't know whose bright idea was it to give it another swing at a relationship. It was the worst decision in the world for both of us. Neither one of us was in a place to be in a relationship, let alone add more weight to it by saying, hey, let's have another baby and then let's get married. So I got pregnant because, the drinking came from the fact that I just needed something else to focus on. That's what my brain told me. And so I get pregnant, and not by accident, for real. And I decide, you know what, this time, better get married. Just, it looks better. It just looks better. You've been running around here messing up left and right. This can kind of put a buffer on that. That was probably one of the poorest choices I've made because I don't love myself, so I cannot possibly love anybody else properly. I don't even know myself. Like, there's absolutely no way to love yourself when you don't know yourself. There's no way for me to tell you what I need because I don't know. I have no idea. So, we get married, and in my mind, okay, I'm going to have this baby and I'm going to be at home with my baby for, 3 to 6 months, at minimum 3 months. And, things are going to be different. No, furthest thing from the truth. The pregnancy with my youngest was a lot like the pregnancy with my oldest. I was alone a lot. I relied on my mother and my sister a lot because if I didn't have them, I would have been completely alone. And then I ended up having to go back to work when my baby was 5 weeks. And I probably should have filed for divorce that day because my negative perception on men, that was solidified too. Again, they are unreliable, untrustworthy, selfish, and bullies and things of that nature. So I started drinking again right around the time I had to report back to work and, started off slowly. Oh, let's do a little wine. And before I knew it, the drinking had taken on a life of its own. But this time it was way worse than it was the first time. So what I did remember that I kept hearing the people in treatment say that, if you don't handle this, everything that didn't happen will happen. And I kind of felt like that probably applied to everyone except me because I'm special. I can laugh now because it's absurd. And as much as I fantasize about this world just being too much to live in and that I've made so many bad choices that there is no way that I can go back to the beginning and undo it. And, in my quiet time when those voices would be telling me that, my life is not worth living and I was agreeing with them, I was scared to die. I was unhappy in life, but I was also extremely afraid of death. I don't know what that entails. So this particular time, I'm like, okay, I do need some help. This has gotten out of control. And I went back and forth in my mind, like, who leaves their children and go? My youngest at the time, she was only 10 months. And there was another voice in me that said, well, who parents under these conditions? So I went and I don't know if there was a lower place that I could have went. I know that was like my bottom. And I felt completely hopeless and helpless and just awful. Oh my goodness, I felt horrible. And it was my bottom. But what I did not anticipate was, what was it? Like a trampoline effect underneath the bottom. I never anticipated the bounce back the way that I did because that moment of being out of excuses and justification and lies and self-pity and self-loathing and all of the rest of the stuff, my choice was to turn around and stop talking about everybody else and what they did or did not do and how they behaved and whatever, and start really focusing on things that would help me get better, that would let me heal. And, like if you have a broken leg and you never ever go to the doctor and let them take care of the leg, once you go 2-3 years later, they may say, well, we can fix it, but we have to break it first in order to put it back together. And most people will opt out of that because that is extremely painful. And the first time that they felt the ouch in that leg, they don't want to feel that feeling again. So I'm like, okay, here goes nothing. And it was not without mistakes and it was not without hiccups and it was extremely painful, but oh my God, it was beautiful. It was the best gift that I could ever give myself, was to come to know me and not and stop identifying myself based on all of the things that I did wrong and everything that I wasn't and everything that I thought that I should be, and just learn to genuinely love myself. And I don't even remember how long after it was from my release that year. So one day I was in the bathroom and I was washing my hands, and I looked up at myself and I thought, I like you. And it wasn't a superficial I like you. It was real life. Like, I see you. I can finally see you, and not through the lenses of my broken heart and my shatteredness and my pieces that I wanted to hide from the world, flaws and all. I see you and I love you, and I see your worthiness, and I don't see all of the mistakes that I made as mistakes anymore. I don't. They are the things that help me be more empathetic to people and to understand that there's always more to people than what meets the naked eye. And everybody has a why behind the what. I think oftentimes we focus so much on what people are doing. We never pause to come to terms with maybe why are they doing that? My behavior was literally a host of trauma, a lot of unhealed brokenness, unspoken regret, and unspoken pain and misery and resentment and all of the rest of that stuff. It was literally unhealed heart. It was a broken heart. My behavior was my outward actions of saying, hey guys, I know that I look very happy on these pictures and my hair is together and I get up and I get dressed every day, but I feel like there has been this gray cloud that has followed me and been hovering over me for a very, very long time, and I'm not that happy with it. I'm not very happy. So oftentimes, my sister told me that I'm like the nosiest person in the world. She's like, who would even think to ask the stuff that you're asking? And I asked because I needed someone to ask me. I needed somebody to listen to me long enough to make me believe that I was worth their time and energy, and that, I don't know, I can turn this thing around and I can be whatever I desire. Once my mind changed and my heart changed, then it caused my vision to change. And with that, there was a complete perspective change. And once my perspective changed, I realized that anything is possible. And the parts of me that I nurture are the parts of me that's going to grow. So I spent a whole lot of time nurturing my wounds and my brokenness and my regret and my betrayals and all the rest of that stuff. And I completely starved the resilience and the brilliant part and the happiness and the joyful parts of me, because although pain is an uncomfortable feeling, when it's been there for a long time, I had made a covenant with that thing. Pain was so familiar to me that letting go of it was completely frightening. And people don't understand that unless you have been in that pain for a while. And that's actually how I came up with the title of Ripped, Rattled, and Rose. Because when I say that life ripped your girl back and that I was more than rattled, huge facts, and that I could have folded, but I didn't. I rose. And I just want to be able to share hope with people. I want to be able to encourage and promote transparency and honesty, because I really believe that all of those things are necessary if you're going to get on the other side of something that was a cripple to you at one point, and literally allow for it to be a stepping stone to be the very best versions of yourself. So I hope that you all enjoyed this episode. I hope that you all will meet me here again next week. And I hope that you guys take care of one another and love on each other. I'm out. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Ripped, Rattled, and Rose, the place where we have authentic conversations on mental health, womanhood, sisterhood, and purpose. As always, I'm your host, Rose, and I appreciate both your love and support, so I like to stay connected. We can do this by following me on Facebook and Instagram, both titled Rip, Rattle, and Rose. And also, please subscribe to my YouTube channel titled, wait for it, Ripped, Rattled, and Rose. I'd like to know your thoughts on this episode. And if there's any other topics that you'd like for me to discuss, these are the best places to communicate that to me. Until next time, please take care of yourself and love on one another.